Hello and welcome back to my channel. For this card, I'm playing around with the color throwdown colors for this week, as well as the Sierra Girl stamp from Picket Fence Studios. Alright, you guys, I'm using my stamp positioner, and you see that green thing that was behind my paper? That was actually foam, and I put it there because my stamp positioner did not want to stamp this correctly. Now, I am starting with my darkest of my colors for the skin tone. This was the second time I have colored this stamp. I colored one real quick just to make sure that these colors blended well, but this is my E18 marker, and I'm just marking out where I want the shadows to go. This actually was a lot easier for me than it would be for a lot of other things, because occasionally I do draw, and faces, specifically female faces, is what I tend to draw. So I already had a rough idea of where shadows needed to go. Next, I am putting in my mid-tone. This is still more of a shadowy color, so I can't really say it's mid-tone. But I'm going in where I wanted the colors to be a little bit darker, but not the darkest of the dark colors. Alright, and you see where I kind of pushed the darkest color off the chin. I did not mean to make it that dark. This is one of those times where if I had used my lightest skin tone first, I could have saved myself a little bit of trouble. In the end, I think this turned out pretty good though. I think she has such a pretty face, and I don't know, the colors, they worked well for this. Alright, for my hair, I am using a B39 marker. Now, this is not one of the Color Throwdown Challenge colors, but this is not a main focus, so I figured I could probably get away with it. I just didn't want her hair to look gray when I got done with it. So I am randomly squiggling lines here and there on the hair, and that's just so that it's, you know, a dark color without it looking like, you know, she's got gray hair. I will tell you, I probably colored over parts of the leaves or maybe even parts of the flowers. I'm not sure. It was very difficult for me to distinguish what was hair and what wasn't. And part of that is probably due to my stamping not being perfect. Like the bottom flower, you can tell, is a little bit lighter. All right, here I'm going in with an E49 marker. This is brown, not black, of course, but I wanted it to just have a dark color to it. I didn't want to use straight black because I felt like that was gonna lose any detail that was there. Then I am going to take my C8 marker, and I am going to go over more areas because I still want it to look black. And I'm covering over some of the blue, and I'm coloring over some of the brown, and it doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to darken the hair. And at some point I realized that I still needed to go over it to tone down that blue just a little bit. So in a moment, yep, C2. I tried C2, and I think that was a little bit too light, so I actually went back over with, I think, my C5 marker and colored over everything. Now I'm giving her a nice dark red lip, and this was pretty straightforward. Generally, you want the top lip a little bit darker than the bottom because the light doesn't catch the top one the same. And now I am darkening her eyelashes because I felt like they didn't stick out enough. So I'm just using one of my, I think this was Faber-Castell liners. And now I have the sheet of watercolor paper and Distress Oxides in Spun Sugar, Abandoned Coral, and Fired Brick. Now these are supposed to mimic the colors from the Color Throwdown Challenge. And I am just smushing them on some acetate. And I'm trying to go in like a diagonal pattern, and I'm trying to go from lightest to darkest so that I don't contaminate my ink pads too bad. After I give it a good spray with water, I'm taking a clean paintbrush and I'm just dragging it through the ink, trying to mix it a little bit. I'm also going to spray it one more time to make sure it's plenty wet. Lay my paper down, rub it, flip it over, take the acetate off. Now I am left with this like glob of water and pigment, so I'm trying to soften that up because I didn't want such a hard edge. And now I'm gonna heat set it because I don't want to have to wait for it to dry. And then I felt like the top needed a little bit more of that light pink, so I'm just smudging that one on the acetate and repeating the process just with my spun sugar. And I will again heat set this. Now, I felt like it needed some more, so I'm going to splatter. And this is the same as I normally do. I'm just using acetate this time because I already have it out. And I'm just splattering until my heart's content. So I'm taking the same watery distress inks and I am kind of making splotches here and there on the panel just because I felt like it still needed a little bit more color and variation. So to soften this, to keep it similar to the rest of the background, I am taking clean water and kind of going over all of the color that I laid down just to make sure that it's not so harsh. And again, I'm going to heat set this because I don't want to wait for it to dry. And now I'm going to take this Beautiful Flowers 2 stamp set from Simon Says Stamp and this little square paper that I cut out as my template. I also have this little pink paper I have actually cut out to kind of keep my paper lined up. And I am placing my square on its side a little bit, or on one of the points, to make it more of a diamond shape. And now I am going to use that to kind of figure out where I want to place my flowers. Now, for the ones that have stems, I am not stamping the stems. I am just stamping the flower. So I'm just going to be careful not to stamp or get ink on the stems. Now I'm taking my Fired Brick Distress Oxide and I am going to stamp my flowers in that. Now at this particular time, I did not know if I was going to leave the flowers in just the red stamped ink or if I wanted to go over them with black, which is why I went through the trouble of trying to keep my paper in the right position so I could stamp it again. So I'm going to take my liner and I am going to outline my diamond shape, but I am going to stop before I get to the flowers. Now, as you'll notice, I do leave the one side completely free of lines at this point because I wanted to stamp a second flower. Now, I had decided at this particular moment in time that I just wanted to leave the flowers the color that they were. All right, here I just have scrap pieces of paper on my desk and I am using them as masks because I didn't want to cut anything off. So because I have this thin lined paper and a thicker white piece of paper, I actually had to switch their position to stamp it again so that the lines were even on one of the spots, because wherever the paper's thicker, it's not going to stamp as well as the thinner paper. All right, so here I am using R22 to kind of fill in some of the white spots of her hair because I did cut her out and I mean, it's ridiculous to try to get through all those little pieces of hair. So I left those white knowing, can't even talk. Yep, that's me. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to cut all those out, but I'd be able to color over it. So I also used R20 for some of the lighter areas. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, and for my sentiment, I decided to go with something that came from Tiny Words Faith stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. And the sentiment is, "You were made to shine," which I thought was simple and pretty and fitting. I actually have a recipient in mind for this card, which is not normally the case. I usually just make cards to make cards, which I would have made this card to make this card anyway because I like the Picket Fence Studio Beautiful Girls, or whatever the stamp set line is called. I love those. I think they're really pretty. I've actually got a couple more of them that you will see me make cards with soon. All right, since I wanted a very crisp black stamping, I used my Versa Fine ink. And here I was deciding, did I want to put foam tape or just glue it down flat? And since I'm mailing this, I am using liquid glue. I'm just going to attach her kind of in the center. And now I'm going to adhere this panel to my card base with liquid glue, and then my card is done. Thank you all so much for watching. I will be back with another video soon. Bye!